will our members and guests please take your seats? We're going to get started in a second. Good evening. My name is Alexis Volgaris, the RTM moderator. As all members have received a copy of the call for tonight's meeting, the reading of the call will be omitted. This evening, we are going to welcome a group of Greenwich Girl Scouts who are going to lead us with their color guard and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So will everyone please acknowledge you girls, you may start walking on down and begin your color guard procession. Oh, okay. You were going to do that. I'm sorry.
This is fancy. Good evening. My name is Adelina Ponce, and I am a sixth grade Girl Scout at Central Middle School. On March 12, 1912, Juliet Gordon Lowe registered the first Girl Scouts in Savannah, Georgia. In honor of this important date, Greenwich Girl Scouts will perform tonight's color guard. Color guard. Prepare to present the colors. Audience, please rise. Color guard, advance. Will you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On Sunday, April 6, Greenwich Girl Scouts and the League of Women Voters, Greenwich. Wait, let me just repeat that for a second. On Sunday, April 6, Greenwich Girl Scouts and the League of Women Voters, Greenwich will host our annual Women in Government event at Town Hall. We invite all women in government, BET, BOE, RTM, Town of Greenwich staff to help our youngest constituents learn how to make an impact in our community. This annual expo-style event is free of charge and open to the public. Select woman Rabin and select person McGuigan will give tours of Town Hall, and we learned this week that Connecticut Secretary of State Stephanie Thomas will attend again. Please join us. To learn more, go to bit.ly w.i.g2025. And in case you're wondering, Girl Scout cookies arrive on Saturday, March 22nd. Color guard dismissed. Audience, you may be seated. Have a great meeting.
Thank you very much for that. And I do hope that some of the women on the RTM would be interested in joining us on April 6th. It's a great event. Jackie's usually there with the town seal, and the kids go around with these like little passports, and at each station we stamp them. So it's a really wonderful event to promote local government. Okay. 2 weeks ago, the RTM lost one of our finest and most steady members, Bob McKnight. His passing is not only a loss for the RTM, for which he served almost 30 years, but also a loss for the entire Greenwich community. Bob was a dear friend of mine and someone who I often would turn to when I wanted a honest, unfussy opinion about an issue. He was as no nonsense and as straight shooting as they came, and I absolutely adored everything about him. Tonight, we welcome his niece, Tuesday Tambori, her husband, Derek Butler, and Bob's partner for the last 20 years, Angie Reinecke, as we pay tribute to Bob. I would especially like to thank Angie for keeping several of us up to date on Bob's health and passing along our messages of good wishes for him over the last month. And on behalf of the whole RTM, I would like to extend our sincerest condolences to your family. This evening, we will have 3 speakers offering tributes to Bob and sharing with the community what an exemplary and outstanding person he was. Lucy Von Brockel, Joe Kantorski, and Frederick Lee, who will also be inviting all of the members of the Appointments Committee up when Frederick delivers his remarks. You can just, stand behind him so that everyone recognizes what a treasure Bob was. So I'd first like to recognize Lucy Von Brockel.
Good evening. Oh dear, okay. Bob McKnight epitomized what it means to be a public servant. We don't always realize, sorry, this is terrible. We don't always realize the extent of a person's good deeds until we lose them. This was very true of Bob, who was so modest about his many contributions. Few realized just how large an impact he had. Bob really, really wasn't keen on being recognized for his accomplishments. I will not forget the uncomfortable look on his face last November when he stood before us, and Alexis told us about what turned out to be a fraction of his military commendations. But while we may have been unaware of the extent of Bob's service, the strength of his character was always apparent. Some of the words and phrases I've heard people use to describe Bob in the last few weeks tell a lot about him. He was a straight shooter, humble, dedicated, loyal, kind. He was fastidious, direct, principled, and had very high standards. He was patriotic, honorable, and generous, a stand-up guy, and a very high honor from RTM members. Bob ran a damn good meeting. Bob grew up in Cos Cob and has lived in Byram for the last 30-ish years. According to newspaper accounts, the first of Bob's many accomplishments to be recognized came about in 1954, when the esteemed jury at the YMCA Halloween party bestowed upon him the award for the best outer space costume. He graduated from Greenwich High School in 1966 and started college that fall. Upon taking what was meant to be a short break in 1968, he was immediately drafted into the Army, ultimately serving 2.5 years in Southeast Asia. He was a platoon sergeant in Company B, 2nd Battalion of the 25th Division's 12th Infantry. When asked, Bob would simply say he served his country and would always make a point to honor all veterans. What he kept to himself is that he was a hero and he served with great valor. Bob was awarded 2 Purple Hearts, 5 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star, 3 Air Medals, 2 Army Commendations, and 1 National Defense Medal that we know of. I'm sure there are more out there. Vietnam veterans in Greenwich came home to little, if any, fanfare, and often felt stigmatized by their participation in an unpopular war. Soon after he returned, a reporter for the Greenwich Time reached out to 19 Vietnam veterans, asking them to join a group interview, and only 4 of them agreed, one of whom was, of course, Bob. It must have taken some courage, but it was clear Bob recognized the importance of being a voice for fellow servicemen struggling to assimilate. And he spoke in 2015 when the town honored Vietnam veterans in that year's Veterans Day observance. One statement that Bob made that was published in the papers that speaks volumes about him, quote, "I stand before you, an American veteran with no regrets, proud to have served and prouder still of all my high school classmates named on the memorial behind me. These are my heroes." Our D2 colleague, Joe Kelly, interviewed Bob a few years ago and shared that interview with me the other day. In response to Joe asking him about what inspired Bob to give back to the community, he said that his military service put him on the path to serving Greenwich and his family. When he returned to Greenwich from Vietnam, Bob went back to finish his undergraduate degree, studying political science at UConn, and started volunteering soon after he graduated. In the early 1990s, he moved to Byram, where his contributions will always be felt. Bob worked as a security guard at Mead Point for 25 years. D2 members Joe and Jill Kelly described him as the keeper of the watch, the anchor of Mead Point, the primary source of local news for residents, and he developed lasting friendships with everyone in the neighborhood throughout the years. Former RTM members Nancy and Duncan Burke said that he brought the same diligence and commitment to his job as he did to his work on the RTM and everything else he was involved in. Another neighbor, Leslie Petrick, pointed out that Bob's fan club was not limited to humans. Her two golden retrievers couldn't resist sneaking out over to the guard booth to visit him regularly. Bob joined the RTM in 1996. This was his 30th year on the RTM. He took on the role of district vice chair in 2002 and was elected chair in the next term. Until January, he had never missed an RTM meeting, not one. We are unmoored without him, but he set a rhythm and tone for us to follow. Bob's meetings were regimented in a good way. Everyone is treated fairly and with respect, and we are always civil, even when we don't want to be. One of the things he would often opine on was the importance of supporting other districts when a project they were advocating for came before the RTM. Supporting projects in your own district and voting against comparable projects in another district was peak hypocrisy for Bob. We may represent our district, but as a town, we're all in it together. He did not make it a habit to give public comments at RTM meetings, but when projects in Byram were threatened by an RTM vote, Bob rallied the district and spoke passionately on behalf of our neighborhood. And his advocacy was not confined to the RTM. You'll hear more about the incredible work Bob did in Byram outside of the RTM from our former BNA, Joseph Kantorski, later. Sometimes his RTM and BNA worlds overlapped. It is a little-known fact that it was actually Bob that came up with the idea for a blight ordinance when a few of us got together to address a specific property in Byram. One of the things I admired about Bob is that while he had very strong opinions on certain issues, he was not remotely political. In that interview with Joe, Bob explained that while studying political science in college, he realized that neither party got it right, as he put it. If you look at his votes, it's clear that he was truly independent. And what mattered to him was his loyalty to the community, admiration for those willing to serve the public, and respect for good governance. You may have disagreed with him from time to time, but you could count on Bob to vote his conscience. Outside of all of this good work Bob did for Greenwich, if you ran into him in the wild, you know that he embraced the joys of life. You could spot him working out or playing basketball at the Y, soaking up the summer sun at Byram Beach with his partner Angie, or taking brisk walks around the neighborhood. Bob loved the town party, which he attended even if he didn't like the headliner, Mumford and Sons, I'm looking at you. He often stopped into Old Greenwich Social Club for a drink or dinner. And a huge revelation to me, according to his niece Tuesday, Bob apparently also enjoyed jumping out of airplanes. No one was really ready for Bob to go, and boy, does it hurt. But he's leaving behind so many gifts. He gave selflessly to our country, our town, and everyone he knew. He set a standard for public service we can all aspire to. We're fortunate to have had him on the RTM and in our lives. Thank you. Take one of my tissues.
Mr. Kantorski.
I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak tonight to honor a very special member of our community, Bob McKnight. My name is Joe Kantorski, and I'm a former chairman of the Byram Neighborhood Association. It's that connection to the BNA that I and 3 others want to pay tribute to Bob and his extensive contributions to the community. Unfortunately, those three, Mike Bacino, Joe Conboy, and the current chair of the BNA, Liz Eckert, are not able to join us tonight. So they've sent me their thoughts, and I'm honored to share them with you. Not surprisingly, Bob's effect, his influence on all of us was the same. You will hear many of the same words tonight from everyone who knew Bob, because we always knew who Bob was. Character, integrity, strength, dedication, loyalty, kindness, and generosity. But above all, perhaps principled, honest service. It's his service that we will continue to honor. And now I'd like to share Mike Bacino's thoughts with you, and they'll be followed by Joe Conboy and then Liz Eckert's tributes. Mike Bacino wrote, "I want to thank my friend Joseph Kontorski, whoever the hell he is, for doing me the honor of delivering in person my fondness for our mutual friend, Bob McKnight. Robert J. McKnight Jr., Bob, as we all knew and loved him, was a passionate representative of his beloved Byram community and the entire town of Greenwich. I had the honor of serving with Bob on the Byram Neighborhood Association for 11 years as chairman, and Bob as our vice chairman during that time. Bob was a student of Robert's Rules of Order and was instrumental in creating, maintaining, and preserving a neighborhood association that continues to be a model for every community neighborhood in Greenwich to this day. Bob was instrumental in assisting myself and other members, such as Joe Conboy, Paul Pugliese, and Joe and Patricia Kontorski, in preserving and saving the historical Thomas Lyon House from destruction and protecting this Greenwich-based architectural gem. Bob's staunch and committed service was exemplified in the creation of the Greenwich Preservation Trust, to which he was a founding member and served as treasurer for many years. Bob stood for and accepted nothing but excellence and accountability from all the different committees that he was involved in. This was most prevalent in his 25 years of service to District 4's RTM, serving many of those years as chairman. My friend Bob was also instrumental in supporting myself and our then legislative delegation of Senator Scott Franz, Representative Libby Florin, and Representative Fred Camillo in helping us to acquire state funding and local support for a new state-of-the-art New Lebanon school that proudly serves the Byram community, as well as the entire Greenwich Elementary Schools magnet district today. It was not until our second year of service and leadership of the Byram Neighborhood Association that I came to understand all of Bob's incredible accomplishments in the United States Army. At the time, I had spoken to then Principal Jean Nivtre of New Lebanon School about reinstituting a Veterans Day ceremony for the students at New Leb to celebrate our local heroes. I approached Bob after my discussion with the principal, and I said that I was looking for some local veterans to attend the ceremony. I said that I was going to reach out to friends at the Byram Veterans Association, but I knew there were other veterans in our community that we wanted to reach out to. So I asked Bob if he would help me. Bob said he'd be happy to attend. Taken aback, I said to him, "Bob, did you serve?" Boy, did I feel like a heel. when I discovered that not only did Bob honorably serve as a sergeant in the United States Army, but that he had earned 5 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star, and 2 Purple Hearts during his involvement in the Vietnam War. Once I relayed this information to the principal, it was agreed that the reinstitution of Veterans Day that year at New Lebanon School was then to be celebrated as Bob McKnight Day. Bob was a true hero who quietly, behind the scenes, served our town with honor and dignity. He was a true fighter and a hero to his beloved Byram community and his country. I am deeply saddened at his passing, but I am incredibly honored and grateful to have served with him, to have known him, and most importantly, to have had the pleasure to call him my friend. These are the remarks from Joe Conboy, who is the Greenwich Preservation Trust Chair. Joe says that Bob was on the board of directors of the Greenwich Preservation Trust, and he in fact was one of the founding members. He served as our treasurer. He was active in our events, worked on zoning regulations, helped change the state cemetery law to a more strict and cohesive law. He worked with us with the 830G statute that protects historical resources throughout the state. Bob was dedicated in working to support Old Greenwich as the town's first village district in hopes that other village districts would follow suit. Bob continued to work on the preservation of the Lion House. He put much effort into preserving one of the oldest houses in Greenwich. Bob represented the Greenwich Preservation Trust on the town's cemetery committee. Bob was devoted to preserving historical structures and cultural resources of Greenwich. He educated, raised funds, and promoted for his beloved history of the town that he lived in, Greenwich. He'll be a great loss to the Greenwich Preservation Trust. And these final words are from Liz Eckert, the current chair of the Byram Neighborhood Association. I'm grateful to Joe Kontorski for graciously stepping in to represent the BNA tonight. While I don't have the privilege of serving alongside Bob on the BNA, didn't have the privilege of serving alongside Bob in the BNA, I, along with every resident of the Byram community, have reaped the rewards of his dedicated service as our vice chair. Bob was truly committed to preserving Byram's rich heritage while thoughtfully steering our community into the future. His remarkable contributions have left an indelible mark on Byram, ensuring that his legacy will be cherished for generations. Bob was a cornerstone of our community, and his absence will be deeply felt by all who knew him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Frederick Lee, as well as members of the Appointments Committee, if you could come up and stand in solidarity with Mr. Lee.
Right, fellow members of the RTM. Today I rise to honor someone who has never sought recognition, but whose service demands our acknowledgement. For 30 years, Bob McKnight has served this body with uncommon dedication. Bob served as a delegate in the Appointments Committee and was elected chair in 2020. He also served as the L&R alternate and often stepped up and took additional RTM work. As member of the RTM Governance Committee, which was a huge time commitment for him, he and Bob May authored the RTM Chair's Manual, an invaluable resource. When you think about Bob, Bob met hundreds, maybe thousands of volunteers nominated for town boards and commissions. Sometimes during our interviews would spark a memory, and Bob would tell great stories about life in Greenwich. Just this past December, he told us about how famous his graduating class was for starting a Greenwich High School rite of passage, the senior prank. He was rightfully proud to be part of such a legendary event, often telling the story of the 1958 VW Beetle that they hauled up to the second floor of what is now Town Hall in pieces and reassembled in the main corridor. I hear that seniors at the high school are still trying to one-up this feat. As has been noted by many, Bob earned all his leadership roles. He had very high standards for his RTM service, as well as for his fellow members, but he was forgiving and wasn't the type to lecture. He was respectful, preferring to lead by example and share his opinions without imposing them on anyone. When introducing people, Bob made a point to mention their good deeds, often highlighting contributions others had overlooked. And he was a great and generous friend, as you've all heard. When a colleague or friend was being honored or remembered, Bob showed up. He paid attention to what was going on in our lives, going out of his way to say something kind and encouraging when you needed it. He always made a point of introducing people with a compliment or two. Bob's impact on our community is immeasurable, and his absence will be deeply felt. His legacy is one of service, integrity, and unwavering dedication to the people and places he loved. On behalf of everyone here, Bob, thank you for 3 decades of showing up, speaking up, and always putting Greenwich first. Your legacy in this body will continue to inspire all of us fortunate enough to serve along you. Greenwich is better because of you, Bob, and so are we. Thank you.
If I could ask all the members to stand as we observe a moment of silence in honor of Bob McKnight. Thank you. I actually find it hard to continue after this, but we just have to muddle through. We have a couple of announcements. We have a vacancy now on the Anti-Hate Task Force. There's an RTM member vacancy. If anyone is interested in that, please just let me know and we can find a way for you to join it. There's one volunteer. Jude Collins, are you here? Do you want to make your announcement? With Joe Kelly. Why not?
Hello, everybody. So on behalf of the Greenwich Hibernian Association, we'd like to invite all RTM members to March in the 49th Annual St. Patrick's Day Parade, which will be on Sunday, March 23rd. We will start at 2 p.m. in front of Town Hall and walk down the avenue. We want to thank the police department and the Selectman's office for helping us out. Do we have a banner?
We may have a banner.
So anybody who'd like to march with the RTM under the banner, be there at 1 o'clock at Town Hall. And we'll show the whole town what we represent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Who
We
didn't
have,
give me any lines.
Debbie Applebaum and a small group of us are working on putting together a little class for GHS civics students. And one of the things that Lucy's going to be doing shortly is sending out a form to all of you, asking members why they ran for the RTM, what you get out of it, some basic questions. I don't know if we have all the questions down yet, but you're going to be getting that for us. And hopefully we can tease out some good information so that when we go to the high school students, we have more to share with them. And when we eventually get our curriculum together, we will be asking for lots of volunteers. So even if you're not involved in the planning process, there's a great opportunity coming up on the horizon where you can go and meet with the high school kids and tell them a little bit about local government. Okay. Did I miss anyone for any announcements? I think I've covered it all. Okay. As all members have received a copy of the minutes from the January 2025 meeting, the reading of those minutes shall be omitted. Are there any proposed changes to the minutes from our January meeting? Hearing none and absent objection, the January minutes stand adopted upon unanimous consent. That brings us to the call for tonight's meeting. I have notified the membership that I would recommend the following organization of our agenda. Consent items 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Combined calendar items 1, 5, and 9. That's for the purpose of postponing to April 2025. That leaves us to take up separately items 15, 16, and 17. Items 18 and 19 have been withdrawn. Pursuant to our rules, I will designate the following items: 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 to our consent calendar. And if they remain on our consent calendar, all you will hear is what I am about to say. Item number 2 is the nomination of Lauren Mullen to be appointed an alternate member of the Flood and Erosion Control Board for a term expiring October 31st, 2025. Item number 3 is the appointment of Michael Abrams to be appointed a regular member of the Flood and Erosion Control Board for a term expiring December 31st, 2028. Item number 4 is the appointment of Stephanie Lakoff to be a regular member of the Alarm Appeals Board for a term expiring June 30th, 2027. Item 6 is the appointment of Linda Camel to be a regular member of the Board of Human Services for a term expiring June 30th, 2026. Item 7 is the appointment of James Ty Anderson to be a regular member of the Harbor Management Commission for a term expiring March 31st, 2028. Item 8 is the appointment of James Cobbs to be a regular member of the Harbor Management Commission for a term expiring March 31st, 2028. Item 10 is the appointment of Jenny Larkin to be a regular member of the Harbor Management Commission for a term expiring March 31st, 2026. Item 11 is the appointment of Robert Pruitt to be appointed an alternate member of the Harbor Management Commission for a term expiring March 31st, 2026. Item 12 is the sum appropriation of $15,000 to be appropriated to various accounts that appear on the call for office supplies. Item 13 is the appropriation of $76,000 to be appropriated to the following account: A171-51300, that's from the Director of Planning and Zoning. And item 14 is the sum appropriation of $150,000 is appropriated for a used fire truck. It's going to account Z206-59120-25406. And I believe that is all of our consent calendar items. Are there any objections to the designation of those items on our consent calendar? Craig, could you please prepare the voting window? Okay. If you are in favor of consent calendar items 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, you would vote yes. If you are opposed, you would vote no. You'll have a minute on the clock. Craig, could you please open the window? There you go. Thank you. Okay, has everyone cast their vote that would like to vote? Okay. Yeah, could we please close the vote? Okay, I have the vote on the consent calendar items. Those in favor, 167, opposed, 0, abstaining, 0. Those items have carried. Craig, could you please show the vote? Okay. That now brings us to our combined calendar items, which are items 1, 5, and 9. And these are for the purpose of postponing until April of 2025 meeting. In order to combine the items, we do need a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to combine for voting purposes, items 1, 5, and 9? It has been moved and seconded to combine for voting purposes, items 1, 5, and 9. The motion to suspend the rules is not debatable and does require a 2/3 majority to pass. Is there an objection to suspending the rules? If there is, we'll take a record vote, but if not, we can do this by unanimous consent. Does anyone object to suspending the rules, combining for voting purposes? Hearing no objection, the motion to suspend the rules and combine for voting purposes, items 1, 5, and 9 has been adopted upon unanimous consent. Okay, so would one person like to just introduce all 3 items? I know that appointments is postponing one, land use is postponing one, but just for the purposes of efficiency, if one person wants to read them in, we can try it that way. Mr. Lee, Vice Chair of the Appointments Committee.
Resolved that the following named person nominated by the BOS be appointed as a regular member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency, R2, for terms expiring October 31st, 2028. Postpone. Motion to postpone.
Oh, okay, you're just going to read that. So it's Gordon Hinshelwood,
Yes,
correct?
Glenn Hitchell, correct.
Okay. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? The resolution has been moved and seconded and is now before us. And
Please go to us.
wait, don't go anywhere. So appointments is making that motion, correct?
Wait, Ken. Wait. We saw him, but he. didn't
Okay,
show.
then you make it on behalf of as an individual. So Frederick Lee, because it's an individual, it requires a second. Is there a second? Okay, there you go. I'm assuming that there's no controversy, land use. You're okay with postponing? You're okay with postponing. Okay. That brings us to the next item that we want to postpone, which is item 5.
Right. Resolved that the following named person nominated by the BOS be appointed as an alternate member of the Alarms Appeals Board, A1, for a term expiring June 30th, 2029. Kenneth Milton.
Okay. And,
That was postponed. You voted.
okay. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? The resolution has been moved and second is now before us. Mr. Lee, could you offer that motion on behalf of a committee which now does not need a second, which is to postpone, because now it's before us?
Okay, item number 9.
Mm,
No,
Okay,
yeah.
so you're offering item 5 to be
Right.
postponed,
Correct,
okay?
correct.
Okay, it doesn't require a second. Land use, you're okay with that, or who else? Town services, you're okay with that, right? Okay. Okay, now we're to the final one, item 9.
I resolved that the following named person nominated by the BOS be appointed as an alternate member of the Harbor Management Commission, A1, for a term expiring March 31st, 2028. Richard
Okay,
Prinsley.
will a member please move the adoption of that resolution? The resolution has been moved and seconded and is now before us. And you can make that
Yes.
motion.
Appointments moves to
Okay.
postpone.
Okay, great. There is no debate, I believe, on any of this. We can adopt the motion to postpone items. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. We can adopt the motions to postpone items 1, 5, and 9 to our April 2025 meeting upon unanimous consent, though if there is an objection, we will take a record vote. Does anyone oppose postponing those items to our April meeting? Thank you. Hearing none, those items stand adopted by unanimous consent to be postponed to our April 2025 meeting. Okay, that brings us to the first of our 3 separate items. The first being item 15. So who is reading that one into Mike Mason? Is that? Right here. Oh, look at you. All right. Snuck up on me. It's not easy.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. So item 15 is our labor contract with the Silver Shield, our Greenwich police officers. So resolved that the representative town meeting exercising its authority pursuant to the general statutes, section 7-474B, and the fiscal year 24 budget resolutions hereby rejects the use of the fund necessary to implement the terms of the town Silver Shield collective bargaining agreement covering fiscal years 24, 25, 26, and 27. Said funds have been previously adopted in the 2024 budget, and the rest is as it appears on your call.
Thank you very much. May a member please move the adoption of the resolution? The resolution has been moved and seconded, is now before us. May we have the reports from the committees that considered this item? And it looks like Josh Brown, head of our Labor Contracts Committee and Town Services Committee, will be first to the podium.
I had momentum coming down the aisle there.
Momentum.
Madam Moderator, fellow members and guests, Labor Contracts Committee met on this and we had Mr. Mason presenting. Our vote was 0-4-0 against the rejection. We're comfortable with the contract agreement. For the police, it was 3-year. The real changes are in the salaries, the GWI of 275, 295, 295 in the 3 years. The other change was in the healthcare employee contribution. First year, no change because we're kind of in the middle of that. It's 0.7 increase in the employees' share in the second year and 1% more in the third year, reaching them up to about a 16% for their contribution for healthcare. In addition to those changes were stipends, generally $500 across the board in many of the stipends that they earn. We had a lot of conversations around comparative pays, working conditions, things of that nature. And we're comfortable with the contract again, 0-4-0. Town Services had the same discussion and it was 0-11-0 with District 8 absent.
Thank you very much. James Waters, Chairman of our Budget Overview Committee.
Good evening. Budget Overview Committee voted 0-12-0 to reject item 15 to accept the, i.e. to accept the contract as negotiated. We also had Mike Mason in attendance at our meeting who provided an overview of this contract, which covers 155 personnel. I will not repeat what Mr. Brown just said. Have literally the same exact data written on the page before you. The only thing I would add is this is a fairly large contract with total costs of approximately $93 million over 3 years. We also heard that the town is starting to see the positive impact of the department being out of the defined benefit plan. And we were also, BOC was also told that the union has already voted to ratify the contract. Finally, we heard that members did not seem to believe that the contract we would get a better result if this was taken to arbitration. And in fact, the GWI increases in other facets may actually be worse. So BOC vote 0-12-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Zorthian, Chairman of our Finance Committee.
Madam Moderator, fellow members of the RTM, visitors. The Finance Committee took this up and heard from Mike Mason, who gave us great detail on the contract. Finance Committee then voted 0-12-0 to reject the recommendation to reject the contract. the details have been covered. I'd have only this to add, which is we were very impressed that Mr. Mason was able to get us a contract under 3% per year in wage increase. No other police contract in Connecticut has that feature. Thank you.
Thank you. Debate on item 15, no one has signed up, but if anyone wants to come to the podium, otherwise we'll move to the vote. Okay, I don't see anyone rushing to the podium. Craig, could you please prepare the vote? Just as a reminder, this is worded to reject, right? So if you're in favor of rejecting, you would vote yes. If you do not want to reject, you would vote no. Okay, you have 1 minute on the clock. And Craig, could you please? Okay, so everybody knows what they're doing? What? Mr. Meskers? Okay. Okay. It is, I understand because it's the double negative, okay? So if you would like the contract to go through, you want to pass the contract, you are going to vote no, okay? If you want to reject the contract, you would vote yes. Yeah. Let's hope we don't start them off with this. Does everyone, in all seriousness, everyone understand what they need to do? Yes? Okay. Okay. Has everyone voted that wants to vote? Okay, and everyone is clear on, it's the rejection in there, so you're all good, right? Okay, we're gonna close the vote now. Okay, I have the vote on item 15. Those in favor, 5, opposed 165, abstaining 2. So that item has failed. Craig, could you please show the vote? There you go. Okay. That now brings us to item 16. Mr. Mason?
Thank you again. So item 16 on the calls comes from a reopener language that was in a contract that you had. So let me read you the language. Resolved that the representative town meeting, exercising its authority pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 7-474B and the fiscal 24 budget resolution hereby rejects the use of the necessary funds to implement the revised terms of the Greenwich Municipal Employees Association, GMEA, collective bargaining agreement covering fiscal 23 through 26. Said funds have been previously appropriated and adopted in the fiscal 23 budget.
Thank you very much. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? The resolution has been moved and seconded, is now before us. May we have the reports beginning with Josh Brown, labor contracts and town services again?
Madam Moderator, from members and guests, Labor contracts met on this and we voted 0-3-1 against the rejection. The one abstaining, we had received some information, needed time to digest it further. And so they were uncomfortable in voting otherwise. So they abstained. As was described, this is just changing the salary schedule for the dispatchers. Very challenging job and role in town. It's evolved amazingly over the last 10 years with the amount of technology and where they insert themselves in the process because of the use of technology. Really puts a lot of strain on these people. There are 15 positions of which there are only 11 employees serving. And so that means there's a lot of overtime because they have to have people sitting in the seat doing dispatch. It requires people to do back-to-back, 12-hour shifts, multiple days sometimes because they can't staff it. So partly to reopen this was to create a more inviting environment by improving the salaries, looking at some improvements in some of the conditions, holidays, things of that nature to, again, make it a more attractive position. They've removed the bottom 4 steps in the salary schedule so that everybody kind of moved to the 5th salary, but that is now the beginning. And then if you have years, you go on from there. So we, again, discussed the impact on dispatchers and the ability to hire, also comparative pay for other dispatch organizations. Mr. Mason had, done some research and found they're comparable dispatcher pay schedules in line with what we're doing here, and felt that this was fair and reasonable. So it was 0-3-1 for labor's contracts. Same discussion at town services, 0-11-0 with District 8 absent.
Thank you. James Waters, Chairman of our Budget Overview Committee.
Good evening. The Budget Overview Committee voted 0-12-0 to reject item 16, i.e. to accept the contract modification as negotiated. We also had Mr. Mason in attendance in our meeting who provided an overview of this labor contract reopener. We also heard about the town's struggle with retention and recruitment of dispatchers and the current vacancies, given the nature of the dispatcher roles being significantly different from the other employees covered by the same contract. We heard the same detail about the removal of the bottom 4 steps. And we heard that about a general sense that the contract modification should help with hiring, recruitment, and retention. BOC's vote was 0-12-0. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Greg Zorthian, Chairman of our Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee also took up this item. We heard from Mr. Mason. Not much to add to the prior 2 speakers. Our vote was 0-12-0.
Thank you. Again, no one has signed up to speak, but if anybody would like to come up to the podium, you're welcome to do so now. Otherwise, we're just going to proceed with the vote. Okay. Craig, could you please put the voting screen up? Oh, Mr. Brown. Oh, they did so well the last time. I was going to do that, but maybe you would like to be the moderator. So that was a cheap shot, I know. All right. So again, it is worded to reject. Okay, there we go. So if you would like to reject, you would be voting yes. If you do not want to reject and you actually want the contract to go through, you are voting no. Does that meet everyone's qualifications for describing it? Mr. Meskers, does that get your seal of approval? Okay. All right. We're going to open it up for a minute. Craig, can you open it up? What is that binging? Oh, my God. I'm just gonna check myself into Silver Hill early. Let's see what's gonna happen. And I'm gonna find out what happened, and I'm probably not gonna like it. All right, I think it's open. You can cast your vote. Very stressful moment. Okay, the vote should be open. Oh, do we have any music? Okay, so everyone's voted. Francie, are your clickers working? Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna close the vote, okay? And hopefully it works. You're good this time. Yeah. Okay, I have the vote. And thank you for your patience. Those in favor on item 16.3, opposed 167, abstaining 3, that item has failed. Okay, that brings us to the final, oh, yes, thank you. Brings us to the final item for the evening, which is item number 17, the Green Skies Power Purchase Indemnification Agreement. And we have Kate Bush, our new town administrator, who I believe is making her maiden voyage debut, introducing a resolution. So thank you.
Thank you. This item is to approve use of indemnification or insurance to indemnify Green Skies for the contract. So the resolution recommended was whereas the town wishes to utilize solar energy at the Cohen Eastern Greenwich Civic Center by entering into a power purchase agreement with Green Skies LLC. And whereas the power purchase agreement would require the town to indemnify Green Skies LLC under certain conditions. And whereas the town's risk management department is able to obtain insurance coverage to provide the indemnification. Now therefore be it resolved that the representative town meeting hereby approves the use of an insurance policy to provide the required indemnification under the power purchase agreement with Green Skies LLC.
Thank you very much. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? The resolution has been moved and seconded and is now before us. May we have the reports from the committees that considered this item, beginning with, who's rushing down? Greg Zorthian of the Finance Committee. And Craig, Jane Weisbecker is going to be giving the LNR report. She's online this evening. Okay.
Finance Committee took up this item and passed it 12-0-0. There was a lot of discussion about the economics of the agreement, that we would be saving or $22,000 a year, over $400,000 in the term of the contract. There's discussion over peak, how much electricity this would provide for the center. Some very good detail, Kate. Thank you. And we passed it 12-0-0 after a good discussion.
Cheryl Moss, Chair of our Public Works Committee.
Good evening. We had a joint meeting with Finance, and the only thing I'll add to Greg's report is that with the savings of $22,000 a year, and the indemnification will only cost $3,000 a year. So that's a great deal for the town, and we approved it 12-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine LaBalbo, did Parks and Rec want to give their report? Catherine LaBalbo, Chairwoman of our Parks and Recreation Committee and Moderator Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Good evening. Your Park and Rec Committee met last Tuesday. We were joined by Kate, which was excellent to aid our discussion in indemnification. We had some questions just as to how the system works and how the solar panels attached and whatnot, but recognize that those questions were outside the purview of what was before us. Your Park and Rec Committee voted 12-0-0.
Thank you. And let's pull Jane off the Zoom call.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. LNR took this up last Monday. We had Karen Fasliotis with us as well as Kate Bush. The town is entering into a power purchase agreement with Green Skies for solar power at Cohen Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. Green Skies will own and maintain the solar panels, and the town will buy power from Green Skies. The agreement term is for 20 years with the option for a 5-year extension. This was before us because of indemnification clauses in the agreement, pursuant to which Green Skies and the town will indemnify each other. The town charter ordinarily prohibits this, so this is something that we usually are asked to approve the indemnity itself. In this case, we were asked to approve an insurance policy for indemnification. I'm not going to go into the particulars of the agreement. You guys already got that. We looked at the indemnity and thought that there were a couple of oddities to it, to be honest. There's language in it that suggests the town and Green Skies are indemnifying each other for breach of contract, which was a bit unusual. We looked at this, and Kip Bergweger reminded us that the resolution before us only seeks the RTM's approval to inquire the insurance. Members of our committee, and I'll state this because this happens a lot, also express frustration that LNR is often asked to consider items that due to time and constraints cannot be postponed to a future meeting, but we don't get all the information that we need at the time to answer questions. Ultimately, we voted 10-0-0 on legal order, 6-0-4 on the merits, with D3 and 10 absent. The abstaining members on the merits were concerned about open questions on the agreement and process, whether the agreement is actually a lease, the absence of the assistant town attorney, and the lack of information and documentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any debate on item 17? No one has signed up, but again, if anyone would like to come to the podium, you're welcome to do that before I open the vote. Okay, moment of truth, Greg. You're going to open the vote? Let's see. All right. Okay. If you are in favor of this item, the indemnification policy for Green Skies Power Purchase Agreement, you would vote yes. If you are opposed, you would vote no. Could you start the clock, please? Has everyone cast their vote who would like to vote? Okay, Craig, we're going to close the vote. Okay, I have the vote on item 17, the power purchase agreement. Those in favor, 151, opposed 4, abstaining 17. That item has carried. I would like to thank everybody this evening for doing such a lovely job in honoring Bob McKnight. It's a huge loss for all of us. And so I would like to thank Lucy and Frederick for all the, and Joe Kantorski for all the work they did in really providing a lovely tribute. There being no further business, this meeting stands adjourned.